Oh, the drop. What's up, everybody? How we doing? Welcome to Iller and Filthier, brought to you by the Tossing Salad Podcast. I am your host, Greg Eisenhower, along with my buddy Brian. And
what's up?
Welcome to episode 2. Going to be talking a little. There's a draft going on tonight. If you guys didn't know that, there's a big draft. And tonight, we're going to take you through the top 5 best available hair band albums from the 1980s. And we're going to get into a little game called Missouri Man.
Iller
Brian.
and Filthier.
Let's do it.
1. Hey, Brian.
So, what are you doing, man?
Well, I sat back and thought about the things we used to do.
I laugh about this
We
every single
had
time I
a
hear
lot
it.
of fun.
You really want to do this with me?
Bro, you know I do.
Great job on the music.
It's pretty good. I'm good for making 30-second bits or less. I think that's my calling.
Everything that you're good at is about 30 seconds.
That is exactly right.
I think it's the first time that we've started a show and we actually have people waiting on us to kind of watch and be part of our show, which is put on and recorded live, and then we kind of do a little cleaning up and editing, right? And then we'll post it on Iller and Filthier by tomorrow.
Yeah.
They have an opportunity to be part of the show.
That's exactly right. It's exciting, right? It was fun last week. We had some good times. It's been a fun week going through, seeing more OJ stuff fill my feeds, and then now this week's been fun getting ready to talk about this. I kept hearing about drafts, so I reached out to Brian. I'm like, gosh, we got to do something with this draft. And then just crazy out of nowhere, my boy Gardetto reaches out. You saw him he was in like a parking garage or something. But
he's a wild dude.
Yeah.
I'm still kind of curious what the deal is with him. But
yeah, he's
people may be curious, like what the hell are they talking about? Because if they don't subscribe to Iller and Filthier on our social media channels, they don't see the small little videos that our cast and characters are going to start putting out a lot more of. And Gardetto has been one that has been putting out some videos. Yeah,
Gardetto, he's a cousin of mine, good dude, producer guy. And he, his new project, I guess, is he was tasked with he's going to be working with some kind of band. And they mentioned that's the sound they were going for. So he was like, man, I didn't know that era very well. So he's like, who's old that I know that, and is musical. And that's where that came from. Cause he knew I did a little time back in the day with some music like that. And so he reached out and said, hey man, can you give me the best 5 albums from that era so I can use it to listen to? Let me see here.
Which was a pretty good idea to do, because it actually forced me to have an awakening or reckoning of the 80s hairband albums that I have in my vinyl collection, which I don't have very many. I've told you before that it wasn't my main musical style when I grew up in Los Angeles back in the 80s. I was more pop and rap and R&B, but I knew the singles that were on the radio. So tonight's going to really help me out as well. So
those of you don't, are new to us, but those of you that know me, I was part of this big band in the 80s called Megamuff. Brian, you want to pull that? I think we might have an image up. Yeah, that's me in the tiger stripe there, or whatever that's called. Maybe it's not tiger, but beautiful shirt. This was us back in the day.
Just at a process of elimination of not necessarily what a tiger stripe looks like, but I guess a zebra stripe or something. You're second from the left, right?
Yeah,
I'm assuming that's you.
Yeah, it's hard to tell. It was a long time ago. I didn't have a beard. It was much younger.
That's pretty sweet.
Yeah,
that's kind of fun,
right?
Yeah.
And you got another really funny. I was on the road for a long time. We were over in all kinds of countries. but somebody sent me this funny picture today. Hearing about it, I was like, gosh, I don't even remember some of these. But yeah, our interns came up with this one too. I'll let you share that one when you get a chance.
Oh, wow. Is this kind of when you were big into the groupies?
Yeah. I don't. Gosh, I don't even know when this was. I don't even know who that was.
You're kind of into blondes, I think.
Yeah, she's super young. Whoever it is.
Well, you do like them young, though. Dang, very
Yeah.
Nice.
Do you guys like my rouge? My rouge is nice. Like that's nice little makeup, clean shaven.
Enough about
face.
your rouge. I want to hear more about the these groupies that you're pulling on the side. Dang.
Yeah. So anyway, that's so Mr. Gardetta reached out and said, "Man, let's talk about give me the best thing." So what Brian and I did is we put a little you guys are going to go behind the scenes with us and see a little draft room.
Amanda, the ever hopeful gardener, she would like to see more of Gardetto in the bedroom, apparently.
Okay. All right. She's the only one.
And Amanda, I believe Greg will break it down if Foreigner fits the criteria tonight, because that's a huge question of mine as well.
Hold on,
and just to let you know
yet.
before we get into the section there, Greg,
yeah.
I had 3 people tell me specifically for Foreigner, because Foreigner, I love Foreigner, but I don't have a lot of these 80s hair band people in my collection. And I had 3 people say, yes, Foreigner is an 80s hair band. And I had 3 people adamantly tell me absolutely not. So I'm curious to find out tonight.
Well, let's go through a little bit of what the criteria is to help you out, what we're looking for here. And again, this is about the best albums of that hair band era. But some people might be like, well, what is the hair? You'd even asked earlier, what's the difference between hair metal, hair band? So what it is hair band it can be many different things, but it's been talked as hair metal, glam rock, pop metal. It was popular in the 80s, but really centered around the Sunset Strip. So you just had this, like a lot of people, I think our age probably remember the Seattle 90s sound and what happened there, this big explosion of grunge music, right? And all of a sudden everybody, before that was the 80s in the Sunset Strip. And that is where many bands started. On any given night, you could walk down the Sunset Strip and see all the major bands that came out are all over MTV at that time and the radio playing on the Sunset Strip. It was the classic era of sex, drugs, and rock and roll. I mean, it was, that's why a lot of people look down on it, because it was a goofy era, but there were some great musicians in there. There were some great bands in there, some of which held on. But it was, I would agree. It's all about big hooks and anthems, big guitar solos, the look. It was probably more about the look than it was everything else. So bright clothing, big hair, makeup. I mean, a lot of people looked like girls. That's actually where Dude Look Like the Lady came from Aerosmith. It was all kind of about that time. And what's funny about that is that even that era is kind of why grunge blew up. It was kind of the revolt to that. I mean, bands like Metallica, who were going down to LA and had, wanted nothing to do with the hair and makeup and stuff. And then you had all these bands in the 90s just like say, okay, we're going to go down to simple. But so big hair, the look, the guitars and stuff. So because of that, I would not put Foreigner on that list, but they were big during the 80s. I think that's what gets confusing, is they were big and had massive hits. Because I did some research this week. They have huge hits.
This is where I'm confused, though, because I know what you're describing. And I look at it as do probably a lot of other people. And I know people that are like really into rock music in the 80s or whatever know the difference and why a certain group like Foreigner is or is not part of the hairband category. But I just assumed it was the look, like you had mentioned, the hair of the 80s, and that they had a band. Are there drums and a guitar? And then for me, that's a hair band. And just to throw this out too, I was like, and they're white, right?
Yeah.
All hair bands are white.
Most, yeah. Because
is there a hairband that's not?
Probably not. If there is, I mean, I can't think of it. I bet. I mean, there was Living Color, but they were kind of after that. But yeah, I think the thing about it is it's just the look. It's like, you know it when you see it, but the hairband was leather pants, lace, like, you know, just super, super over the top. It was all about the look and flash, and everything else was like secondary. And I think MTV is one of the reasons that era blew up too. It was kind of it was the time of, you know, that it was big, you know, that was a big time. MTV was blowing up, and the 80s hair bands really took advantage of that. All the videos were about fun and partying, and that's where if you think of like Foreigner, if you've seen them, I mean, they're rock. I think of them more as classic rock a little bit. And
are they? Okay.
All these things kind of like wind together when you talk music genres, you know?
Right. And then for tonight, are we keeping it somewhat basic, or are we gonna get a hard to find with this?
I think there's a lot. This is one of those things, like I said, there's going to be a lot of, this debate goes all over the place, because I think you've got, you know, music folks that, like, guys that play instruments and stuff would probably disagree with our list, because some of the bigger bands commercially maybe didn't have some of the better musicians in it, but you know, it was all about the commercial. The power ballad changed everything. I mean, in many ways,
that's right up my alley. Power ballads.
Ballads.
To this day, I was out chopping down a tree, and I had my my music going. It was all power ballads and 80s hair rock today to get ready for the show.
Oh yeah.
Jeff
100%.
Moon is saying, "Dude looks like a lady" was about Vince Neil. I didn't know that.
Yeah,
it's out of my genre.
He's still in my thunder. Jeff, stay tuned. That's going to be episode. We might get back into our diss tracks one of these days that we brought up this week. But the power ballad is really what set it apart. Now, Foreigner did have that. They had those big power ballads, but that's another thing that separates those guys. You had to have a power ballad. And those of you that remember the like boy band era, the early 2000s, I think of the hair bands a lot like that. You know, there were people putting guys on stage just because they looked good. I mean, it was very girl driven. There was a lot of women and girls that followed. That was the whole, again, part of like the whole 80s debauchery, was like, it was all these pretty guys and guys that look good.
And was it a little bit of a mix of the androgyny, which was kind of cutting across? Yeah. You had mentioned that before here 5 minutes ago, but that wasn't just specific to this genre, because you're talking Prince, Shalimar. I mean, the music that I was listening to, other than the rap, which I don't think really got into the androgyny part of things. Yeah. But the R&B a little bit, and the pop was definitely that too.
And a lot of that came from the New York Dolls, Alice Cooper, early Kiss, and David Bowie. All that came from this, like, you know, early glam and what they called like 70s glam rock. That really, like, lots of leather. That put us into it. 80s just became about just more fun and light. Like I said, the music had no like depth to it. It was just you know, writing songs about sex and drugs and rock and roll. Honestly, that's really what it was. I mean, nothing but a good time, you know. Yeah. Just listen to the words. That could be the whole anthem. But so what's fun about this list? What do you want to go ahead and pull that up? So I put it. This is our draft board. Just a second here. This is our draft board.
Shall we tease with the draft intro music that you made?
Oh yeah, let's do that. Yeah.
All right. If you're spending time producing in the studio with Gardetto, I don't know if he helped you with this one.
This one is
You got lost searching for things you never find. And looking back at time wasted, you spent it on losing your mind. Well, if things got bad and you look worse, you just go running high.
Pretty good, huh?
Now things are getting a little fancier because now you've got people singing over tracks or something. What's going on?
That was a hit from that sexy band you saw at the beginning of Megamuff. So that was actually a Megamuff tune.
Ooh,
So
did you
I
get
dug that.
clearance from
Oh yeah,
Megamuff?
yeah.
They
It's
gave you the okay as
I
part of
checked
as
with,
one of the members.
yeah, I checked with iTunes. Yeah, I own
Meg,
25% of that band. So if we have to spend $1, I'll get a quarter or whatever. Like,
you care real quickly to expand a little bit on the name Megamuff?
it was just so 80s. It was everything about, we were
That
trying
does
to be
sound
in 80s. And I think there's a pedal, a guitar pedal. A lot of guitar pedals have funny names, and I believe my boy Jay had one called the Megamuff. It's like, if you Google it, that's what comes up. But yeah, we just thought it was hilarious sounding. So, but as you can see, we've got the draft board pulled together. So what Brian and I have done is we've put with a few backups too, but we put our list together. And what's funny is we had a couple crossovers. We had a couple of the same bands, but different albums. And so again, this is Brian and I's list, and then we're going to try to pare it down to 5. But what do you think when you see this? Is there something you haven't seen before? Like, what do you?
So, yeah, well, I've got a few different questions, and briefly, the one that's not here that I'm just curious as to why they're not. Again, and I think you mentioned it before, like Metallica. For me, visually, again, out of the genre, if I'm looking at it from outside in, I'm looking at those dudes and I'm like, they look, if I didn't know who they were, I'd be like, that's a hair band. But is it just because the style is more aggressive?
It is. It's the singing. It's, if you listen, I mean, it's pop music. I mean, honestly, in its time, in some ways, how I view country now has become like the pop music of our generation right now. It's like pop in the sense that it had a formula. Like, it was, good singers. A lot of these guys had good voices. They were higher voices.
Mm-hmm.
That's why they could sing the ballads. But it was just all about that look, man. It's the makeup. As you see, if you just look at that top left Poison album, that tells you. I mean, Poison to me is the quintessential like hair band. When I think of a hair band, that's who I think of. I mean, just out of the look, the makeup, the eyeliner, the whole. I mean, it was all about, like I said, show and just teasing your hair and stuff like that.
Is it possible, like, for me to determine if Pamela Anderson slept with them, they're a hair band, or made a video with them, they're a hair band? Or that's
pretty good. Yeah. Jeff said Faster Pussycat. There's so many bands that aren't on here. Because again, this was for Brian and I's favorites, if you will, or trying to think of the best album. And I love Faster Pussycat. I think they have good songs. I think there's a lot of bands in this era that had good singles, but we wanted to think of like the best album.
The best album. And it's a little difficult because, unlike, I'm sure Jeff has his in his head, his top 5. Greg has his top 5. And the hard thing that Greg and I are doing is we're coming together this is how Greg put it earlier in the week when he pitched the idea of the show, was that we are in a war room, a draft war room. If you guys do fantasy football or you watch the NFL draft or something, which Greg said was going on tonight.
Yep.
And we're on the same Iller and Filthier team, and we're coming in together to propose our favorite albums of the 80s that fall within that hair band thing. So, but I'm deferring to Greg's musical background because this, again, is more of his genre that he knows a little bit more about. But I recognize every single one of these, and I'm sure I recognize plenty of the songs. If I heard them, I would be like, oh, I love this song, but I don't know if I could tell you what group it is.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's, like I said, that's another thing. That's part of the debate, is there's a lot of bands out there when I was going through trying to like do my own research on and looking up stats and stuff, trying, again, thinking about like a draft, like who's the best player on the sport kind of thing. I learned a lot about, I, for example, we had talked about Guns N' Roses. I wasn't sure, I didn't think of them as much as a hair band, but then the more I read, I mean, they were born on the Sunset Strip. They were based in LA. They came from two bands. LA Guns is another band that's not on this list per se, but that's another big hair metal band. Hollywood Rose and LA Guns were two bands that were in Sunset Strip. They kind of, once they broke up, that's where Guns N' Roses came from. They quickly left the Sunset Strip area, so I think that's why they came.
Guns N' Roses came from two different groups, or the name.
The guys in the band, they had a falling out of a couple. Axl Rose was in a band called Hollywood Rose, and then they formed from that, became LA Guns, who Tracy Guns is their guitar player, and then Axl started Guns N' Roses, and but they kind of quickly transformed into something a little different, but if you remember the Appetite for Destruction video, again, this is MTV, was huge during this, and I think it was the imaging and a lot of that is what helped drive this popularity. It was getting to see these guys all the time. That's where Headbangers Ball came from, which was a late night cool MTV show. And back, before social media and all that, these were the fun things you had to do. I mean, this is what I watched on the weekends. Watching Headbangers Ball, I would record it sometime. It was just awesome, because that's where you get to hear the music. Because some of this music didn't quite like the Metallicas of the world at this time, like you said earlier, they were aggressive, so they didn't make radio. This was radio friendly. I mean, the radio ate this stuff up. That's why it's singles. That's why I think of it more like pop. It was radio friendly, and you still hear them on the radio today, right? The Poison, Skid Row, Bon Jovi.
So let me ask you a question. Do you know they were on the radio poppy, but was that the track that was on their album as well? Because I'm asking from a rap perspective or from R&B, to where I would know songs that are on the albums, and then I would hear it on the radio, and they would change it up to make the radio. Is that what hair bands did also, or no?
No, most of their stuff, I mean, they spoke in all, they didn't swear. It was all spoken like Cherry Pie, for example. She's my cherry pie. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. You know what they're saying, White Snake, Slide It In, Slippery When Wet, like all these things, we know what they mean, but that's how they got away with it. I mean, Motley Crue's the same way,
Sure.
all these little funny, anecdotes they could make it on the radio. And that was the kind of the fun about it. It wasn't vulgar per se. It was fun pop music that you could, and it was blues based, all blues based, man. It just had this cool blues vibe to it, where it's dancey. I think it's just feel good. It's party music at the end of the day, party music. And then you suck in the girls by playing a hair ballad, and they're like, oh my God, it's so sweet. Every rose has its thorn, arguably the biggest and best. I mean, still to this day, people love that song, right? I mean, that's the first real big power ballad that was like, the broken heart. That was the original Taylor Swift was Bret Michaels writing about his breakup.
Well, isn't a little hairband music synonymous with the strip club also, or no? I mean,
for sure.
I've
only heard from friends
that have gone back in the day, but the soundtrack at the strip club is nothing but hairband and rap music.
Yeah, Motley Crue is killing it in. Pour Some Sugar on Me. It's got to be. I think you have to play that in a strip club every night.
Which group did that? Because when I hear Pour Some Sugar on Me, which I love,
which one do you think it was? It's in the top row.
Pour Some Sugar on Me. When I hear that song, all I remember are movies about strip clubs. With
Again, from your friends.
It's in the top. I'm gonna go. Well, I know it's not Guns N' Roses. I know it's not Bon Jovi. I'm gonna say Def Leppard, and I feel pretty good about that.
That's
but
pretty correct. That is correct. Okay. Yep, that is off the Hysteria album. That was a huge record. In fact, if we want to start getting in this a little bit, that is the highest selling album on this page. So by sales and stats, Def Leppard, Hysteria. So of what you're looking at here, that has sold over 12 million copies in the U.S. I kept it to the U.S. The world numbers aren't much
How
different.
do you say that? Is it is it not hysteria?
Hysteria, yeah. Hysteria.
Oh, hysteria or hysteria?
Hysteria.
Hysteria.
Like you make me hysterical, you know.
Okay. I was wondering. Okay.
Came out in 1987. This was technically their first big breakout record, but I think it's like their third album. Pyromania was before that. That got some commercial success. That kind of put them on the map. But
yeah,
with a lot of these guys, it's interesting. It was second or third albums that were pretty big for these guys. But yeah, I think they had like an early one. They were the British invasion of all these guys. They were from Britain. They were part of this British invasion of hair metal that kind of came in, and Def Leppard always kind of fit in with these guys. But a little different because they're British. But yeah, most selling records of this era. So this is Mutt Lange produced this album.
I've heard his name like up everywhere for like 20 years. Was he involved with? Wasn't he married to Shania Twain?
He's married. So yeah, so Mutt Lange they hired him to help her with her record, which put out 16 #1 singles, like ridiculous. But like, yeah, he got famous essentially from this Hysteria album, just because it blew up. I mean, it had so many bangers on it. But again, yeah, huge. It charted #1. I think it's the only one on this list that actually charted on the Billboard charts at #1. So that's a big, thing considering, you know, this type of music didn't necessarily, you know, especially in today's world, it would never chart up that high. But yeah, so to chart #1, I believe of the list, I believe it's the only one that went #1. What would you think the second most selling?
I'll go with one of the Motley Crue ones.
I said that wrong. Hold on, let me back up. We'll have to edit this part out. I said it wrong. Hysteria was #2. I apologize. Okay. I skipped over it. #1 by a long way is Appetite. So sorry, Appetite, 18 million. So I apologize for that. I read it wrong. Yes, that's the 7th best-selling album of all time. So against any genre of music.
So Appetite for Destruction across all genres.
Yeah, #7 or what did I say? #10. Yeah, seven. Yeah, 7. So that was also 1987. So think about it. Those two albums came out the same year, 1987.
So what was one or two of the big songs off of the Appetite?
Appetite was loaded. I mean, end to end, just loaded.
Packed.
But yeah, so you had Welcome to the Jungle. Huge, right? Yep. Played at every football stadium. Paradise City became a huge Hysteria. I don't know how to say it.
Giving you
Hysteria.
Grief.
Def Leppard, Hysteria. I don't know how to say it. Hysteria.
When he said that, I started doubting how I was saying it, and I didn't want to come out because I feel like, again, not my wheelhouse. I was like, shit, I've been calling it the wrong album.
The Arsonist had oddly shaped feet. All right, I do a lot of things weird, Amanda, but thank you. Paradise City, Welcome
iconic
to the Jungle.
Intro too, right? If you're talking
City.
Like the intro of a song, of any song ever made.
Sweet Child of Mine.
Wow.
Then you had like Mr. Brownstone. You had bangers that were my favorites off the record that weren't even on a lot of radio was Out to Get Me and It's So Easy. God, those are just awesome. Just so, end to end.
Do you, and I'm sure there's super music people that are out there, do you gravitate towards the more popular songs on albums, or are you kind of more of a deep diver kind of a guy?
I do like finding other songs. Like I love the hits. I've never been afraid of the hits. I like pop music. I like melodies. I like stuff you can sing along with and anthems. I've always been very attracted to that.
Yeah.
So I like both. I like to find the other songs on the album, and I also like to. I hear you, Jeff, B-side guy. I like finding songs after I go to a show. Usually, when I go see a band in concert, you walk away with a song that maybe wasn't your favorite before, but because you saw it live, it blew. Right. And I think I've seen all these guys, all these bands. I feel
like Jeff is Jeff buddy of yours?
Yeah. Yeah, Jeff's a
Okay.
KC guy.
Jeff, don't take this the wrong way, but I feel like Jeff would clown on me for music taste or whatever, because when somebody says they're a B-side guy, like I feel like I can't open my mouth and say, "Ooh, I love the big hits." You know,
Jeff likes it all,
I
though.
like some of the B-sides stuff, and
Yeah.
in groups that I like over the years, there are certain songs that I like more that people don't necessarily know about.
Yeah.
But I think if I had to pick and choose, it's more of the popular songs. I'm a simple person.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
there's nothing wrong with pop. They're popular for a reason. I mean, popular songs, there's a reason they sound good. I mean, they're just, when you write a song like that, sometimes you just know. I mean, any band I've been in, I mean, where we've had to write, 8 to 10 songs that had an album, I've done it a lot. There's always 2 or 3 that just jump off at you that are just, you can't wait to play them. You want people to hear them. Not all of them are like that.
Right.
So I think I get it. I think they're that way for a reason, Appetite, 18 million. That's your number one, at least from a sales. See, I'm just kind of, giving you the stats. Sure. Like we said, Hysteria, Amanda, is 12 million. So that's your number 2. And then
Hysteria is the second one you said?
Yeah, tied with Bon Jovi. These two both have sold 12 million copies of these particular albums, that is. That came out in 1986. Slippery When Wet, top 100 best-selling of all time, and 12 million copies. But I would say of these bands, Bon Jovi probably had, I bet if you looked it up, the best catalog of sales. I mean, Guns N' Roses is probably up there too, and Motley as well. But man, Bon Jovi, I feel like had a lot of longevity.
Do you find within this genre again that the fans for, let's say, Guns N' Roses are the same fans for Bon Jovi? I think Bon Jovi, when I think of them, I love it's the group, right? Or are we referring to the guy? I don't know.
Yeah.
I see them, that group, as female. And then I see Guns N' Roses as a male audience.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's because when I think of Guns N' Roses, I think of 6th grade when I grew up in Baldwin Park, California, not a suburb, but outside of Los Angeles. And Brian Park, the fact that I even remember, he was a huge Guns N' Roses fan, and he was telling me how to get with a girl. And I for whatever reason, I associate him with Guns N' Roses. And he was like, "Oh, Brian, you got to do this and this." And I'm just like, "Oh, I mean, I would panic because I was a little, I wasn't experienced with anything at the time." And I remember, like, we would be out in PE and he would just tell me about getting with girls and what I need to do. And then he would talk about Guns N' Roses. So that's what I associate with Guns N' Roses. I always think of this Brian Park guy.
I think you're onto something there. I think they're, again, I think Guns N' Roses was later. Again, that album came out in 87. So that was kind of the tail end. I mean, you had Nirvana and those guys hitting around 89. And I think one of the things that you hear about this is most of these bands were rooted in blues. Guns N' Roses did have some blues, but they were also
did his advice work?
At least
Amanda
once.
Was wondering. His advice, when I look back on it, would probably land me in jail, Amanda. I'm not going to get into the details here because I think Iller and Filthier there's a level of decorum on the show that we can't get into.
Yeah, we're
respectful. But what he told me I needed to do with girls, I can't even mention on the show because now we're 50 talking about it.
Yeah. We'd hurt our back. Now, what he's saying. No, what I was saying is I think they're at the end. The Guns N' Roses had a punk element to them. They did have the ladies following them, but I think there was something. John Bon Jovi was a heartthrob, right? Girls loved him. He's what sold that band. A lot of these guys. Bret Michaels was, I think, girls considered him a good-looking guy. A lot of these guys had that look. Vince Neil from Motley Crue was always this blonde guy. That's him on the cover. Look at what he's wearing on the cover of the Too Fast for Love. It's just, that's classic. That's.
And then who were the guys that Pamela got with?
The drummer of Motley Crue, among
Tommy
others.
Lee, right?
Yeah, Tommy Lee.
Tommy
Yep,
Lee.
drummer.
She got with the lead singer of one of the other ones though. Before Tommy Lee.
I think so. Yeah, I can't. I mean,
her initial video that came out before the Tommy video.
Oh yeah, that might have been Bret Michaels.
I bet your boy Jeff would know.
He might. Yeah, Jeff's my guy.
I saw more TNA at the Guns N' Roses show at Arrowhead than I ever saw in my life.
That's funny.
What is Y&T?
Another band.
Oh, okay.
Forgot what it stands for. Y&T. He'll know. He'll be. Jeff turned me on to most of these. Well, maybe not these bands. He definitely turned me on to like the heavy stuff I listen to now.
Right.
And in fact, funny story. Jeff and I once played in a hair metal band that was a Christian band called Striper, and they were big during this era too. They were Christian based, so they had like their own little niche. And Jeff and I went to church together growing up because we were sinners. And we played with his best friend Mike. We played a little band. We called it Revelation because that was the last book in the Bible. So it's the most metal one. This is the dark one. So we thought it was pretty fun. But yeah,
so instead of getting with 17-year-old girls, you guys are just into music that was talking about getting with Jesus, right?
Yeah, but I mean, to get with girls.
Wow.
Who like Jesus,
right.
It's no different than LA, Brian.
Why? I mean, these albums, like I don't know necessarily like Skid Row. I'm sure I know songs if they came on, but I wouldn't be able to attach to Skid Row.
I remember you, 18 in Life, went 5 times platinum. So it sold 5 million records. That came out in 89. That was a banger of an album too. Enough's Enough, a personal favorite of mine. That one meant a lot to me. That's a personal pick. Like I love that album. They're a Chicago band, but kind of had that same. They had a couple big singles. Didn't sell a lot of records, but they came out of like I said, they were very Beatles and Chicago influence. So big Cheap Trick and big Beatles influences. But I love their stuff. I learned to play drums to this album, that Enough's Enough record, so it means a lot to me, but it won't make the list. I get it.
So on our top 5 that you're going to kind of narrow it down to, and I'm here to help you.
Yes.
I defer to your way of ranking tonight, and I appreciate you included a few of those here.
Yeah.
What are the ones, because you have 5, 10, 11, 12, 13.
Yeah, we got 5. We got to narrow it down.
Can you rule out then for me, just so that I can get my head straight with time?
Yep.
Are there 3 that you'll rule out right now in the war room?
Yeah.
That we're going to get rid of for whatever, not that we're saying they're not good albums, but we're getting rid of.
Yep.
Consideration.
Right. Enough's Enough. We said Foreigner maybe didn't quite make the list. Great singles. Let's see.
I'm liking the production of the effort you've put into that. I appreciate that as your co-host.
I think the top row is where it's at, but not necessarily the album. So I think we have a choice between one of the Poisons.
Okay.
And I think we have a choice between the 2 Motleys. And I think these 3 are locks out of just the pure longevity of
Guns N' Roses, the
Bon Jovi,
Appetite for Destruction, Bon Jovi, Slippery When Wet, and then the Def Leppard, Hysteria, or if you're from Kansas City, Hysteria.
Yep. So this is where I'm at now.
Look at the graphics. I'm loving it.
This is kind of where I'm at. I kind of feel like Guns N' Roses is number 1 to me when you think if they're, and again, some people might argue they're not, but if they are, and for us, we said they are just because they started there. I can't not put them number 1. I'm torn on those. So now we got to pick 3, 4, and 5. But I think I know what I want to do.
Can I just interject?
Yeah, of course.
For the head coach here of our in the war room, I'm just drawn towards certain albums here. Again, what I know, and the Def Leppard Hysteria for me, I think I'm going to try to push up the list if I can for you. The Guns N' Roses, I can't argue either, but the Pour Some Sugar on Me brings back great memories of other people going places and hearing that all the time.
All right. You have helped. This is why we're together, man. Intern Brandon working in the back, or Lance. It's intern Lance tonight helping us out.
I'm glad Lance is here to help out.
I like that. I think you make a great point. I mean, these songs are so well known, and there's longevity there. They're still a band. They're still making music. Bon Jovi, I think, is the same way. I like them in the 3 spot. Again, they both sold about the same amount of records and albums. And
on Slippery When Wet, what's the big hit off of that one?
That's got your karaoke champion. I mean, it's You Give Love a Bad Name and
Living on a Prayer. Is that on there?
Prayer. Yeah. I mean, but when I think about the longevity of the guys too, I mean, and how many good records they have and albums, I really like this order. So what's the tricky part is 4 and 5 for me. So
right now, Greg has leaning towards Guns N' Roses' Appetite for Destruction. He's got that towards the top of the list.
Yep.
And then he's got Def Leppard, Hysteria towards the top. He's got that just behind Guns N' Roses so far. And then what was that third one that you had on there also?
Oh, on here?
Yeah.
Skid Row, Warrant, and Skid Row.
No, on the one you had 1, 2, and 3 so far, like your top 3.
Oh yeah,
that you were leaning. What was that third one that was there?
Bon Jovi, Slippery When Wet. Yeah,
oh,
yeah.
You can't. I even think if Amanda was still here, I mean, she would put in her 2 cents for Bon Jovi
to be 2. I think you can't go wrong there, but I think you're right. I mean.
I can live with this so far. I mean, top 5 is hard with all of the albums of the 80s that are hair bands and the singles that came out of it. And then, maybe Jeff, maybe there's some lesser known songs that you and Greg both know. I feel like if I went to the record store tomorrow with you, Greg, I would want to get at least these first 3 so far. So I agree. Top 3 right now. Guns N' Roses, Appetite for Destruction, Def Leppard, Hysteria, Bon Jovi, Slippery When Wet. I'm good with those as our top 3.
I like the thought of, if I think about how MTV plays into this, I gotta think, and both of those made great videos, but I gotta think Def Leppard, I mean, was big on MTV. I mean, I know Bon Jovi was too, but I'd be curious. So
do you know how many young women were sent to college off of Def Leppard's album?
Oh yeah, seriously, a lot of single moms, and we're not here to single anybody out,
making ends meet. And I'm sure, have you not been to a male or not? Well, obviously we haven't, but friends of ours that have been to male strip clubs, do they play the same music? I wonder.
Jeff, what do you think? I don't know. I'll have to ask Jeff because I know he goes to a lot of those male strip clubs.
Maybe they play Pour Some Sugar on Me also.
They should.
And I would be fine with that because it's a hit song. It's a hit song.
Yeah, exactly.
So we got 2 spots left on the top 5.
Yes. All right. So let's go back to our list. So here, I think all these great songs, White Snake. I mean, come on, you had David Coverdale and his lady dancing on his car. I mean, the appearance of Here I Go Again in Old School. I mean, Frank the Tank working on the red Camaro, and then Cherry Pie, legendary. But so 4 and 5 for me. I think we have to put Motley Crue at 4 because I think you could argue that for them to be 1. Again, these guys are kind of the face of the Sunset Strip. I mean, you're
talking Motley Crue?
Yeah, everything about them was LA.
And that's the one with Tommy, right?
Yeah. And like I said, Poison to me is when I think of hair metal and hair bands, I think of Poison. And I was a big Poison fan.
Can I defer to you, but I'd like to argue Motley Crue getting into this top 5 of ours, because when I think of Motley Crue, I think of Tommy, and then I think of Pam, and then I think of the video, and then I think of Our Time at Mizzou, because wasn't that about the time that video came out? The Pam and
Yeah,
Tommy video,
I
late
think
'90s.
yeah, should have been. Yeah, it's oh yeah. But they were still, but during that 90s era, they weren't doing a lot. They had a big hiatus. All their albums, because their biggest album was what's on here. It was Dr. Feelgood, the bottom right, the green.
Yeah.
So Dr. Feelgood came out in 1989. So again, right at the end of the era. But that was like their fifth record, because you had Too Fast for Love, Shout the Devil, Theater of Pain, Girls, 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 and then Dr. Feelgood. And Dr. Feelgood was this album. So to me, this is the one. I think this is for, you've got, it was a top, so it topped the charts too. So it, like Hysteria did, it topped the charts when it released, 6 million copies. And it changed the sound of music. Bob Rock produced that album. And for those of you that know the Metallica Black Album, Metallica went to him and said, we want our album to sound like what you did on Dr. Feelgood. The sonic value of Dr. Feelgood, it just, the way the bass and drums jump out. I mean, he made himself a career with that album. That's why they hired him to make that record. This was their first sober record too. It's a very well done and good sounding album.
Which sober records really don't do well, right? We want our artists, I mean, like with some issues, right?
Right.
I concur. I say this is a great album. Of just the songs that you had mentioned, I would bring that into our top 5 as well.
All right, I like that in the 4 spot. And then I think to wrap this up, I think I got to go with your pick. I agree with you. I think it's Open Up and Say Ah. Again, Poison is the band that I think of when I think of hair metal and hair bands. So I think I got to put, Poison in for sure. They were one of my favorite, like I said, favorite bands. I played a lot of drums to those guys. Big fans of them. And this is a great album.
I would go get these 5 albums right now then.
Yeah.
I need to add this too, because the whole point of my vinyl collection right now in the last few years is for me to revisit certain areas of music that I never really gave that much of a chance to, and listening to it for really the first time.
Yeah.
Now, like I said, I know some of the bigger songs, but I don't have any of these albums. I need to go get it. So I'm using our show tonight. These are going to be the 5 albums that I get that I'm going to add to my collection.
The fun thing about that, like I would say end to end, I mean, Appetite is awesome. The rest of them probably have some spots that are okay. It's like they had these just banger hits, and then some of the other songs. But I'd argue probably I listened to all these records in the last day and a half or so as well, and I got to say Motley's and Bon Jovi's are pretty solid, like songs end to end. Poison's got some big hits. I mean,
hey, when you're on a date night with Rach, and I don't think your kids are watching our second episode. I think if they were tuning in, they'd tune into the first one. The second one, they're like, yeah, we're done with this. When you guys are date night and you guys come back home, are you throwing on one of these, songs?
No, not
you guys go out to eat and liquor it up a little bit, and you're like, oh, I'm going to put on some Def Leppard.
Yeah, I mean, she used to play like Pour Some Sugar on Me and stuff. But again, with her bad neck and stuff and back, we're so old now, and Slippery When Wet. That's just that's danger. That's
all about ruptured discs when we're our age,
Yep. Yeah, exactly. And Open Up and Say Ah. I mean, that's what I do with the doctor all the time when I think I'm dying of something.
Which is like every other week for you and I.
Yeah. So no, I think this is a great list.
Yeah, great list. So number 1, Guns N' Roses, Appetite for Destruction. Number 2, Def Leppard, Hysteria. Number 3, Bon Jovi, Slippery When Wet. And I think a lot of these like titles and stuff sound like you and I making podcast shows, like coming up with names for them. Iller and Filthier, Tossing Salad podcast. Yeah. Motley Crue, what's the album name for that one?
Number 4, Dr.
Feelgood.
Yeah.
He's and then Poison.
Open Up and Say Ah.
Open Up and Say Ah.
So that would have been that's their
a formidable number. Yeah. That's a formidable 5 right there.
And that album, it probably has, like I said, maybe arguably the anthem of the 80s of this genre, which was Nothing But a Good Time. I mean, just if you listen to that song, you'll understand what hair bands were all about. But that's got Every Rose Has Its Thorn too. So that's why that
yeah.
and Fallen Angel. I mean, the story of the Midwestern girl that wants to go to Hollywood to make it big, but then she gets there, like such a heart-wrenching video. She realizes her family and friends are right. She comes home to him at the end. I mean, just it's kind of like,
who's the video that had anybody that grew up in the 80s remembers Tawny Katane on the
that was Whitesnake.
The Hood. That was a Whitesnake.
Yep.
Is Whitesnake a cool group to listen to?
No,
okay.
They're good. Yeah, they've got good musicians too. Also, they're a good. They got probably a little Zeppelin to them. They probably came out of the sort of Zeppelin vibe, into this genre. But yeah, he very cool. I got to throw some honorable mentions out there. We've heard some people say some stuff, but like we said, I mean, Rat is another one you're going to hear a lot of people talk about. Rat had great music. Dokken, George Lentz was his name. He was the guitar player for Dokken, arguably probably one of the best guitar players, like a true, really good guitar player that came out of that genre.
Dokken's a group. I have no idea. Would I know a song?
You might, yeah. I mean, again, they didn't have as many radio hits as some of these other guys. I mean, Twisted Sister, you could say, was at the beginning. Quiet Riot, they were probably on the early side of that. They probably were bigger before this genre really took off. I mean, they were probably a little early almost because they were. I feel like Twisted Sister was like 1983. I mean, I was a kid, believe it or not. I was a kid once, and I mean, I was really turned on to them in Quiet Riot really early. Cinderella, another, like a lot of people argue that's a great, great band, which they are. I mean, they have big singles too. You'd know a lot of these guys. If you heard it, you'd probably be like, oh yeah.
I think it'd be fun if we lived somewhat close to each other or something, especially this week since I'm home alone all week, that you took me down memory lane on some of these groups and played some songs that you're like, I know you've heard this. And again, my thing is attaching it to the actual group.
Right.
I think tonight was actually quite helpful for somebody like myself.
Right.
That I've heard some of the big ones, but it's kind of cool knowing a little bit more of the backstory and the LA strip history of it. And the Guns N' Roses, I didn't know anything about that.
Oh, that's they've got them. I've got them so I got a wall of fame in my studio. This is Studio G for those of you that don't know. And I got a wall of fame, and Appetite is right over there. I've got my best favorite albums at the top. So when I'm playing drums, it kind of helps inspire me.
Has Rachel seen the Tommy Lee Pamela video or no?
Yeah. She's always trying to want to redo it.
Always
I'm like,
pushing that porn stuff on you or whatever.
I know it's terrible. Well, let's wrap this up. I'm looking at the time. Let's what do you say we head over? I got a little game for us to play before we jump off tonight. A little new game called Missouri Man.
Missouri Man.
Another hit maker.
Missouri Man.
So a new segment here for our show, Greg, called Missouri Man, right?
Missouri Man. Yep. So what we're going to do here is with Missouri Man is I'm going to read you stories from Missouri, news stories, internet stories, things that made the news. Typically that start with Missouri Man. You've heard the game like Florida Man, but I pulled the article, but we're going to go over the title and just see if we can piece this together.
And just to let everybody know, I have no idea what we're doing here. So on the production side of our show for Iller and Filthier, Greg and I have decided that it might be kind of hard every single week grinding out, producing the show and coming up with ideas and stuff. So we're kind of alternating, I think, is what we came up with, at least for the first few months, to where Greg comes up with a segment for our show, and then the following week I'd come up with a segment. And usually the other person doesn't have to do too much work for it, and we're just kind of throwing it on them to see their actual response. So I'm kind of curious to see what this is all about.
Yeah, this is so again, I'm gonna show Brian a headline, and we're just gonna talk about it. We're gonna try where'd they get there. So U.S. News posts Missouri man arrested in SUV with Weehigh license plate. So what the reason I brought this up, so 420 was last weekend, and I don't think Brian and I have ever, we haven't had the cannabis discussion very much. It's legal in many states, including yours. My dumb state won't legal it. And I just don't think I know where you stand on that. And I just thought this was a fun little blurb.
Yeah, I haven't seen this headline, and it doesn't surprise me. The funny thing, so what, 420, that was the
Saturday,
Saturday, which was also Record Store Day for me.
Oh yeah, yep. Yes, it was. I don't think they're always tidy. It's always like a Saturday in April, right, or something.
Kind of like with Easter or something, right? Like Jesus doesn't necessarily come up the same exact day. It's always like I'm always like, why can't you just pin it down to a date?
Yeah, it should be 420.
Well, so tying in a side story on the weed stuff here on your headline. So I went into my Record Store Day, and as I was checking out, the guy was like, "You look like you smoke weed." And I just looked at him, and I'm not a big weed partaker. I don't care, right?
Okay. Yep.
And I'm not one that's like, you've got to make it illegal and throw all these people into jail and all this stuff.
Right.
Whatever anybody wants to do, I don't care. But I thought it was kind of funny, and I was like, I look like I smoke weed, and I was like, I'm assuming that was probably a compliment from him,
right?
Because he was checking me out, and I was buying like 4 albums. And he goes, we had a guy come in and drop off a bag and feel free to go get some on your way out. And I'm like, just thinking to myself, am I being set up?
Right.
Like, is this a narcotic sting? Because I don't know if you can do that retail wise. This is a legitimate record store.
No,
and I was like, I think I'm fine.
Yeah.
I want to have my wherewithal to listen to my albums later on. And he was like, your albums will sound so much better. I was like, yeah, I'm fine.
Yeah.
I'm okay.
Yeah. You'll be like, if you do that, you'll find yourself listening. You'll be like, is that a harp in the closet in the background? Like you'll hear it gets deeper. But anyway, I thought this was funny. But again, why, like the people that advertise it, I guess now that it's becoming more legalized, it just makes me laugh. And who knows, maybe they work for a company that does something with like height or something, and it has nothing to do with pot.
Short people. Maybe that's why he was arrested.
Yeah, could be.
I'm assuming it's, and again, we're just going off of the title, right? The headline.
Yeah.
I've got to imagine, but I wouldn't put it past Missouri, because Missouri is in the news for some stupid shit in the last few years. I got to imagine that there was something else that this person was either being pulled over for, and it just so happened that this was a big signal of what was going on.
They left in the small print, it says, with 5 tons of guns or something. All right, let's see. So we'll move on to the next one here. Let's see here.
Don't you like the functionality? We use StreamYard. It's a program that we pay for that gives us a little bit of polish for the show, and it gives us some toys to play with within the show to make it a little fancier. It's kind of fun, a little more fun doing it this way.
Look at this St. Louis Dispatch, y'all.
St. Louis Post-Dispatch, which is the local newspaper here in St. Louis, who I've done quite a bit of photography work for.
So maybe
over the last 10, 15 years or so. I'm not hired by them, but I'm paid as a when we do travel stories and stuff. Freelance. There you go. Nice. Freelancer.
So St. Louis paper, St. Louis job seeker mailed feces to companies that failed to hire him.
Doesn't surprise me.
Right.
I think I've worked with people that have said they've done this or will do this. We've all worked with weirdos.
Oh yeah.
That you're just like, if something goes down, I know it's this person here. Like, I used to work with somebody, and I am not making light of what I'm going to say next, but I don't think that he would ever listen to this or whatever, but it's one of those things to where somebody is unstable enough that if somebody were to come in and start doing things. You know what I'm saying? I really don't want to say it.
Yeah.
I was like, he's the person to do it.
Yeah.
We all work with somebody that is just a little off.
Yeah. I think we all, in any job we've ever had, I think all of us know somebody that would do this.
Yeah.
Like, I've also heard people be like, hey, if I won, $10 billion lotto or something, I'd go shit on my boss's desk. Like, just to be funny,
And this was,
I love this one because I love this one. Just it makes me laugh.
And the fact that it's somebody, I mean, aside from the fact that it's somebody unstable that would just mail feces, but to do it to companies that don't even hire. So you don't have this long-standing relationship to where you get pissed off, like almost like an actual relationship, right?
Yeah.
That you're in for a long time and you just hate the girlfriend or your ex-wife or whatever. And you've built up all this animosity and hatred towards somebody. These are people you really don't have a relationship with.
Right.
That cut it off right at the beginning, but you're so messed up in the head that you're gonna mail this off.
Yeah,
Pay to mail this off because it has to be a box, right?
I would guess that's a great question. These are the answers we don't have, Brian. This is why we're doing this. We need to know. The more I stare at this one, the more I kind of feel bad. This person's clear. I mean, to do that, I think you have to be not all there. I mean, this is not like being facetious. This is like I'm mailing my poop. Like,
and I would say 80-90% of us, when we read this headline, you think of somebody that you're either currently working with. Like it pops in your head.
Yeah. Oh, I know somebody right now. Yeah. Not at my current job, but my last job. I definitely know somebody who would do this.
I mean, I work for myself now.
Yeah.
I see this and that person pops in my head of the last job I was at.
Yeah.
Now he wouldn't be the one to mail the feces. He'd be doing some other stuff.
Yeah.
But at that same job, there was, I'm sure there was probably a couple people, and I know the department they worked in, that probably would do something like this.
And this, I mean, again, this is trying to find a job can be awful. It's probably one of the worst things to do. So to that part of it, this is the people that didn't hire, not place he quit, but I can see both. That's so funny. That one makes me laugh. Let's see. I want to show this next one because it was on the news most recently, and I love the headline because it cracks. I mean, it's disturbing, but at the same time, it's just that, again, as a headline, it's
perfect
funny.
For Iller and Filthier.
Yeah. So this was recent. Like a week or so, a naked teacher found in an SUV crashed by teen driver fleeing the sheriff. So what is that when you first see that? What do you think there?
Man. Well, first in my head, and maybe it's because I just remember more female teachers that are in the news for getting with these students or whatever. So I'm assuming when I visualize this, naked teacher found in an SUV crashed by teen driver, because I think it would be a male teen driver.
Because they would crash more. I mean, they have more.
Boys are more expensive to insure, right?
Yeah. So that's what it is. But to be fair, if you got naked teachers distracting you, I mean, that's not his fault.
That's true. Well, and then was he? And again, I'm assuming it's a male teen driver, and then it's a female teacher. And was this one of those things to where they're driving and she's distracting him, and then he crashes? What? Crashed by teen driver fleeing the sheriff. So they were chasing.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like they were just driving and he was.
Yeah. I think they were discovered and then probably
tried to take off.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And there's then Miss Jones naked in the back. But how funny would this be? Remember back in the day, I don't know at your school, but I think when I turned 16, the teachers and driver's ed, or the driver's ed teachers were teachers. So what if this was a driver's ed scenario? She's like,
Yeah,
"You're
but-
doing such a good job. I'm gonna take my shirt off."
So I'm thinking as I read this headline here, I'm what's it when you profile? I'm profiling because I'm actually pretty
okay.
good at profiling.
Yeah, we're good with that.
I'm pretty sure this is a male student, female teacher, and they got caught because they were parked doing something.
Yeah.
Why would you? I'm kind of curious why the high speed chase by the sheriff then. I guess we won't know that this is the game, right? Because we're just doing the headline on it.
But I think you're right. I think it was fleeing. They got caught and were fleeing the scene of like, oh my God, we got caught. You know what I mean? Like and he crashed.
Man,
does that make sense? And I save this last one.
Well, if there's a guy watching this now or later, I don't want to say now because I think it's only like Jeff watching us, and I don't want to be like, oh, Jeff's trying to find out what the teacher looked like. But I think that that's going to be the next thing when this goes out, that people are going to look up that headline to find out what the teacher looked like.
Yeah, I don't think it's good. So this one hits me for a reason. I like this one. We're going to end with this one. So this actually happened. I couldn't find the actual like good clipping of it. But this happened at the Margaritaville, I believe, in Camdenton down in Missouri, Lake of the Ozarks.
Yeah. Which I've been to.
Yeah, I've been to Margaritaville there. It's nice. Good spot. We took the family there. So when we stayed there, I did see they have big conference rooms. So there's a lot of conference space there. And I have been to tons of conferences in my career. And a lot of times they're awful. You're sitting there for hours every day and you're bored and you're drinking coffee and caffeine, everything you can. And be like, oh my God, I got to sit here for 6 hours. You were out the night before drinking. I mean, they're down at the Ozarks, all these. And I'm just picturing being in there, kind of staring at my phone, just like, when's this over? Woman reportedly bursts into the room completely naked and bleeding of an unspecified wound. She then reportedly began shouting expletives and trash talking her husband, who was attending the conference. Can you imagine?
I can, and that it sounds exactly like what you would think of that would happen at Lake of the Ozarks.
Yeah, yep, exactly. A fun read is Lake. I think it's called Lake Expo. A lot of good stories on there. That's where this was.
I still feel like this is kind of a meth thing.
Yeah, like why was she bleeding? Like how'd that happen? She's naked. Did she and what was she shouting at her husband?
Right.
Like that's what I want to know. And he's in the
It's
conference.
not enough that it's just shouting expletives, but talking trash.
Yeah. And even just part of the story, just if she kicked the door open and was like, Greg, you piece of shit. Like, you didn't come home last night. Like, just that is a good story, but be like, no, it gets better. She was naked.
I picture in my head the character that of this woman who's yelling. Do you remember watching Ozark on Netflix?
Oh yeah.
Who's the blonde?
Show.
The
Ruthie.
Ruthie.
Yeah.
I picture her yelling.
Fuck. Yeah. That's funny. You're gonna have to fucking kill me. Maybe that's what it was. Maybe it was just she. That would be great. I just want it to be that. I just want her to kick the door open and say
this. Of all the ones that you've shown, this is one that I'm like, yeah, that's pretty much how it goes down in that area.
Yep, it's very Lake of the Ozarks. They call that Saturday night in July. But man, just being at a conference though, I'm just telling you, like, how fun would that have been if somebody did that?
Oh, it would be great.
Yeah. Meanwhile, the guy's buddy's like, hey man, are you leaving? Because can I have your free drink coupon? Right. And sorry about your wife, man.
Yeah, I would love to know the background of this story here too. I think that would be fun to find out.
It's so I think that calls for a trip for maybe me and you this summer. Maybe we do we hang out at the Ozarks for a weekend and just do some undercover kind of work, really kind of dig in, do some news reporting.
I think that would obviously, and then doing a bunch of shows and finding a bunch of interviews. Because can you imagine when that does happen when we go down there? we find this woman and we get her on the show.
Right.
Because I think by then, by the time that we actually get to that point to where we're down there together, we would have had some practice doing interviews with people. And those are the kind that I actually would like to do.
Oh, that'd be fun. Yeah. Get her. She should be on here. You know what I mean?
So I'm going to do that when I get off of tonight. One, because I have nothing else to do. I'm home alone. I'm going to look up a couple of these. I'm going to look up a couple of these headlines, and then I want to see what the teacher looks like.
And you got to listen to some records too, man. I'm proud of you for that.
I'm doing that too.
That was fun, man. This was good, but yeah, we definitely I got to come down to the STL and hang out. But yeah, we should go to the Ozarks for sure.
This was a blast. Greg, you did a good job on the music, putting all that stuff together. You produced a very good show. And I think we are signing off. If you guys haven't gone to any of our social media pages, Iller and Filthier, we are everywhere now. I know it's only our second official episode, but we've been putting out content almost daily. TikTok's gonna get banned here fairly soon, so if you don't follow us there, that's fine.
MySpace,
you can be part of our top 5. We're on Instagram, YouTube, Threads,
RedTube.
And then any of the podcast platforms. So what we do with these live shows is we clean them up and then we put it out on Iller and Filthier the day after. So tomorrow, look forward to the edited version of this. And we had a great time. So thanks for checking us out, and we will see ya. See ya, Greg.
Peace.